So, good afternoon, all. Welcome to the webinar. It's an honor to introduce today's speaker, Mr. L. Prabhakar, Executive Vice President and Head Social Investments at ITC Limited, a leading Indian corporation. Currently, he oversees ITC's comprehensive social investment initiatives focused on building social and environmental capital. His work spans diverse domains, including natural resource management, smart agriculture, social forestry, waste management, education, health, to mention few. And being an alumnus of KREC Suratkal and XLRI Jamshedpur, Mr. Prabhakar brings over 37 years of experience with 3 decades at ITC in key leadership roles across human resources, agribusiness, FMCG, IT, and corporate sectors. He's also worked with TVS Motors and Murugappa Group, and he is an active member of national platforms such as CII's National Committees on CSR and Water and the Indian Sanitation Coalition under FICCI. He also serves as an assessor for the ICSI National CSR Awards and has been associated with several professional bodies, including NHRD, EFSI, HMA, and GCNI. We are so privileged to have you, sir, with us today. And I also come to know that you are classmate of our CEO, Nandakumar, sir. Nandakumar, sir, may I have a few words from you, please?
Okay, I'll make it brief. We all want to listen to Prabhakar. So he's one of the few I know who's done engineering and moved to people and HR. That's quite fascinating, that in itself. And I also had the opportunity of working more than 2 decades, maybe 2.5 decades in ITC with him. And though our paths never crossed, but we did. We didn't work in the same business, but it was fascinating to see how Prabhakar had, brought in passion and people orientation, not only within the company, but largely in the social context, in the external world, right? And today also he heads the social business. That's something unique to ITC, the company which pioneered triple bottom line reporting way before it became something fashionable in India and the rest of the world. So I'm here to listen to him as much as all of you. And without further ado, you, Prabhakar, and
Yes,
platform is yours.
yes, sir.
Let me just put my screen. Dr. Sudha, the screen is visible?
Yes, sir. Screen is visible. Could you put it in slideshow?
Thank you, Nandu. Thank you, Dr. Sudha, for giving us this opportunity. While Ms. Nandakumar said that all of you are keen to listen, for me, every time I get an opportunity like this, it's also an opportunity for me to reflect what we are doing. And when you actually prepare for something like this, you start getting newer insights, etc. So always look forward for this type of opportunities for sharing. As was mentioned by IIT Chennai to all of you people who are participating, that my intent really would be is to present a case study of what ITC does. And this is one of the approaches. Different corporates would have different approaches. Need not be taken that this is the only way that things need to be done as far as water is concerned. What my intent would be is to give you a perspective on why we do what we do and what's the type of strategy and approach that we have followed in actually our entire journey for water. And before I really get into water, I wanted to just give you a brief context of why does ITC even do something like this? And as Mr. Nandakumar was mentioning that much before sustainability, triple bottom line came into vogue, somewhere around 2000 itself, ITC had actually articulated the strategy of triple bottom line. And this strategy has got refined over a period of time basis experiences. And one of the key credos, and I've just come back from our AGM today, and in the AGM speech also, Chairman has actually spoken about responsible competitiveness. And what's important to understand is very often when we think of competitiveness, we presume that you cannot then focus on goodness for the society or goodness for the environment. But what ITC has seen and experienced is that it is possible to be responsibly competitive. The other thing that we have realized very early in terms of our journey is that sustainability can be integrated into your corporate strategy. It's not a bolt-on to business imperatives, but it's actually can be embedded into a corporate strategy. And there are several examples galore in ITC, whether you look at the way paper business has grown, the way we have actually adopted the social forestry and farm forestry strategy, the way the agri-business has grown, again, the famous e-chopal intervention, where we actually looked at doing good for Indian agriculture and farmer. And then over a period of time, dovetailed it into the business strategy, which then again became the, what should I say, differentiator for the foods business for ITC to get into. So each of this actually has been professed, not just as a philosophy, but actually integrated into the strategy, and is at the center of the entire governance mechanism as far as the corporate is concerned, starting right from the corporate to the business to a factory level. And a few years back, when Mr. Sanjeev Puri took over as chairman of ITC, he had articulated the ITC Next framework, which was again to sort of reinforce that sustainability is core and integral part of business strategy. But with all the discussions and narratives that was happening about climate, it also sort of got linked to an agenda for adaptation and mitigation. Before that, adaptation and mitigation was not coming so sharply, but we have now started articulating the adaptation and mitigation strategy. So this is the broad context in which the entire narrative and discourse of water needs to be looked at. I was introduced as somebody who is heading social investment function. And I moved into this role about 4 years back. As somebody outside the function, I've been actually seeing this whole function evolve over the last 20, 25 years. All of us know that the CSR rules came just about, say, 10 to 11 years back. ITC had this function of social investment somewhere around 2000, they started. And the reason we sort of coined this whole function as social investments and not as CSR, because CSR can be one-off. CSR can be, I do something today, I just cut a check, don't focus into impact and outcomes. It does not really sort of create the lasting impact that would be required for the good of society and environment. And that's why this function was coined as social investments. And what happens is the moment you look at it as an investment perspective, willy-nilly, you then start looking at, like any of us who sort of do investments, we look at what should be a portfolio of investments. You do a diligence as to where you would invest. When you invest, you want to sort of look at returns that you are getting. All those rigors of governance, monitoring, discipline automatically gets weaved in when you sort of look at it from an investments perspective. So how do we sort of arrive at what we want to do in social investments? I'll not spend too much time here, but just to give you a flavor, we look at actually start with what the community priorities are. What we call as a core area perspective plan. Once in 5 years, we do a detailed study of about 30,000 households. And every year, again, we revisit with about 3,000 households. We then look at what the national priorities are. And then also look at what the sustainability targets for or sustainability goals and commitments for ITC is. And if you look at the sustainability 2.0 goal, clearly adaptation and resilience is something which is right up there. And you have the inclusive value chains. When you look at national priorities, again, you have climate change as a national priority. And when you actually go back and engage with communities, they actually face the brunt of water, both in terms of shortage of water as well as excess of water in many cases. So that's how we actually identify what are the interventions that we need to do. And this has actually flown into a two-horizon approach that we follow in social investments. All our activities are done under the brand name of Mission Suratkal. So we have a two-horizon approach, where in Horizon 1, it is about strengthening today's livelihoods. And as you can see, there's a clear vertical on natural resource management, where again, there is water, biodiversity, and soil. Then we look at climate smart agriculture. You have the Horizon 2, which is more building capabilities for tomorrow, whether it's in terms of education, skilling, public health, or livelihoods. But what's important is the key tenets. I think the key tenet. Sorry? Hello.
బయట కొత్తదే పెట్టాలి కానా బయట పెయింటింగ్ ఉంటుంది అన్నీ ఉంటాయి కదా.
Yeah, I think somebody's speaker is on. I think the focus is on, again, as I said, catchments focused, being inclusive in terms of working for small and marginal farmers, working, really creating in terms of grassroots institutions, and having a very structured approach for implementation, whether it's in terms of the prototypes and pilots or working with different stakeholders. And what I will do is actually take the entire case of water to illustrate these things. Just a quick footprint. We are present in almost about 24 states, 300 odd districts, reaching out to about 10 million beneficiaries, of which 6 million are women. Close to about 96 public-private partnerships, working in knowledge partnerships with about 20 agencies and about 90 plus implementation partners. The grassroots institutions, almost about 27,100, and you will find right up there water user groups. So now, actually, having broadly set this context, I'll now specifically get into water stewardship. And what you will find is that there'll be a lot of images, very few on text, but more in terms of case studies and caselets as to what we mean in terms of water stewardship. Don't want to spend much time on this in terms of the context. All of you are aware the whole challenge of climate, whether it's in terms of post-monsoon flows, vagaries of high rainfalls or short periods and high spells. Agriculture is one of the biggest water consumption in India. And therefore, if you can actually work on water in the agriculture front, you can reduce cost of water, but do it in a manner that it does not impact the yields and incomes of the farmers. And of course, the whole dependency on groundwater, whether it's in agriculture, also including urban. And as a result of it, large part of India is actually getting into semi-critical to overexploited groundwater category. I think when you actually work with water, multiple SDGs come into play, but really the key SDGs that I wanted to call out, very often we don't link SDG directly to hunger, but increasingly the linkage of water to zero hunger SDG is becoming very, very straightforward and very, very evident, so to say. Clean water and sanitation is much more direct. Responsible consumption and production, especially for large corporates now. Responsible consumption and production is becoming an important SDG goal against which they get measured. And water again plays an important role here. Climate is again very obvious, and life on land is again a very evident one. The two important ones which I wanted to sort of highlight, which otherwise we tend to miss, is zero hunger and responsible consumption and production. So what's been our approach? One is to actually optimize the water use efficiencies, not just inside our factories, but across our value chain partners. Work on water level stewardship, and which is what I would be focusing in our catchment areas. There's a direct linkage to sanitation and wash interventions when you're looking at water. But it's not good enough just doing what you do in your catchments. What do you do to participate and contribute for advocacy and solving the challenges in a shared manner? We have a twin pathways. We do the work inside the fence, means what we work in terms of reducing water consumption through technology, rainwater harvesting in our specific water unit consumption. I won't be speaking much on that, but what I will be focusing on what we do outside the fence. So we have 5 pillars when we are looking at water. One is working on supply augmentation through the whole aspect of water harvesting structures. Then looking at demand management, specifically in terms of agriculture. Both supply and demand, traditionally we were doing in our catchment areas, but then we realized that that's not good enough. And as a responsible corporate, as a large corporate, we need to work on river basins. Urban water was something that we started much recently, about 2 years back. And in fact, I don't think we would have moved on urban water, but for IIT Chennai, we had worked very closely with IIT Chennai, and actually I'll illustrate that with an example later. And the most recent one, where I would say we are still sort of exploring, is the aspect of reuse of water. Each of these 5 elements, actually, we started our entire water intervention sometime around 2000, 2001. When we first started, we were focusing on supply chain. Then we realized that what you're able to do through supply is very, very limited. Demand has got much more potential. Then we got into demand, then we got into river. So each one of them has got built up over a period of time as we started saturating our specific element, or as we started moving into a higher level of maturity. And the results are there for us to see. Just to take an example, over 20 years our water harvesting structure work, we could create a potential of about 60 million cubic meters. Demand management that we started about 6 to 7 years back, just in 24-25, we potentially have reduced consumption of water to the extent of 1400 million cubic meters. So you can just see the ratio between 60 versus 1400. And when you start doing that at a river basin level, the scale and scope increases much, much higher. So this is what one of our most, project of pride. This was in Madhya Pradesh, in Sihor, where the type of water harvesting structures that we actually created with the community, this is what you actually see. Second, it's very important to involve the community. What we had done actually in Sihor was involve the community through water user groups. Anything that we do on water, we first start with water user groups. And this has been a huge differentiator for ITC for 2-3 reasons. One, they are involved in designing the type of structure that is relevant for that particular context. Their inputs come into play. Second, they take responsibility for the maintenance of the structure that has been created. Third, they collectively decide how do we want to use the water, how do they want to share the water. And I think the important thing that many of us tend to miss is the democratization of use of water, especially given the social dynamics that are prevalent in rural India, becomes extremely important. Otherwise, you run a risk of doing a structure, but the benefits could just accrue to probably the large farmers or people with more authority or power, etc. But how do you ensure that the benefits go to the entire village and all the members of that particular community? And this is something that now state governments have started realizing the power and potential. And I'm just sort of highlighting the partnership that we have with the Water Resource Department, where now they're asking us to train all water user groups in some of the districts in Maharashtra. And it's a very, very intense module-based training, as you can see, right from the source of irrigation, the system types, how to do crop water budgeting, how do you do indenting for water, what sort of practices do you need to follow, and more importantly, how do you sort of look at operations and maintenance. I think if ITC has succeeded in ensuring the impact and outcome to the level that it has attained, one of the key reasons is this water user groups, and large part of our effort and time goes into sustaining this water user groups. The other thing that with our experience, which we have done over a period of time, is using certain tools and techniques. Many of you would be familiar with International Water Management Institute. So we actually created this drought proofing tool, where what happens is you feed in all the input parameters that are required for that particular village, and what is the requirement in terms of water consumption requirement. And based on what you input, it actually tells out in terms of what your action plan should be, where should you be focusing on. And based on that action plan, then the engineers come into play to say what type of structures that needs to be created. This is a tool now that we use in all our watershed interventions across different states. And now certain governments have started using it. For example, Karnataka government actually had asked us to train all their irrigation department people on how to use this particular drought proofing tool. Just some examples in terms of supply augmentation. As I said, each one of them would depend on the particular place. What is important to note is the sheer scale of work, almost about 35,000 structures till date. And the number that you see in brackets here, 3,500, that's the number of structures that we did in 1 year in 24-25. One of the important things, again, learning that we had when we are looking at water is one needs to focus also on soil moisture conservation, whether it's in terms of catchment treatment or in terms of biodiversity. But what was happening was when we were actually working on this entire supply side, we realized that there was a lot of silt that was accumulated. And if you have to create the storage capacity, you have to remove that silt. We have now started using that silt in the fields, because of which the soil organic carbon has improved. And because of which the dependency on chemical and other fertilizers has come down, as also the yields and incomes for the farmers has improved. Also looking at specifically in terms of targeted groundwater recharge, significant work in terms of the whole aquifer recharge works across different states. Likewise, when you look at demand management, this is where we work very closely with agriculture universities. Different types of practices to reduce consumption of water. Zero tillage is one of the most important ones that we have in wheat. Rice, all of us know in terms of has been a water guzzler. Direct seeding of rice, we have almost both alternate wet and drying, and DSR we have promoted in 5 lakh acres. Now, this is a practice which a lot of people have attempted, have not been able to sort of implement it at scale. One of the reasons ITC has been able to do it is it's not just telling a farmer that you should be doing this, but are you there with the farmer 365 days a year, hand-holding the farmer in behavior change, hand-holding the farmer as the farmer is transiting from one practice to the other, and during that process, understanding what are the operational challenges that the farmer is facing, and then together working to solve those particular problems. And we had very, very impactful studies done, including by Atari Kanpur, Nudge Foundation, where they found that not only has the water consumption come down, but the farmers have also sort of gained in terms of yield and income. And this is now again, for example, the National Rural Livelihood Mission wanted us to make a presentation as to what made the DSR intervention successful. And we have now converted that as a playbook and a toolkit. We are working on other crops also, whether it's in terms of banana, spices, soya bean. Together, across all these crops, 15 crops is where we have actually reduced water consumption by about 1,400 million cubic meters. I was referring to in terms of the urban catchment. Typically in an urban catchment, you have the heat islands, the natural drainage systems have got altered, water bodies have got disconnected, and the ground tables are actually getting depleted. This was a place very close to our factory in Tiruvallur. As you can see in terms of the water bodies have in a way got encroached. There would hardly be any capacity here. And this is where we actually had worked with IIT Chennai. And IIT Chennai had done a detailed study of that particular geography and had recommended a solution in terms of which are the water bodies that we need to work, what is the interconnectedness of these water bodies, where are the STPs, what are the issues with the STPs, etc. And over a period of 2 to 3 years, we actually sort of implemented all the recommendations that were there of IIT Chennai. But as we were doing it, we realized, if you see, this whole water body is next to railways. And invariably, this is where railways come into picture. Then there is a corporation. So the challenge was, how do you get Chennai Corporation, Southern Railway, and the local communities, get all of them together to solve this particular problem? And that is where the role of ITC tends to be of an orchestrator. As we were working on this, we realized that plastic was one of the most important issues. We actually recovered from these two water bodies 68 tons of plastic. And then we worked on STP. But what had happened was we did this for one season. And then we realized after about a year, things were getting back to the same point. And that is when we realized that STP was an issue. But more importantly, we realized there were about 32 informal dumping spots. And we had never thought that waste management needs to be integrated into a water design intervention. Again, we worked with the community, with the corporation, reduced the 32 informal dumping spots to 4 formal collection spots, and ensuring that the collection happens over a period of time. And this is what it is right now. Now, how did it manifest in terms of an impact for the community? I think a few years back when there was a big cyclone, for 20 days, the area around these water bodies was inundated. 2 years later, when again there was a cyclone with double intensity of water, the water logging was only for 1 day. And that had a straight impact, whether it's in terms of health, in terms of sanitation, in terms of economic livelihood, etc. And this is one example of Chennai. Second example of Bangalore, slightly different context. Here it was more an issue in terms of water shortage. So again, here we work with Indian Institute of Science, worked again at multiple interventions. Work is still in progress. But here what we found was we also needed to work on reducing consumption of water in urban areas. And again, when we were doing insighting, we found that plumbers play an important role. So we started working with plumbers who then used to sort of influence the households in terms of very simple things like going for aerator taps. How do you work with all the residential associations to actually go for recharge pits? How do you work with the corporation for actually having pavers in the pavement so that water could be absorbed? Based on this experience, where we found that with the work that we were doing, the water was now available at a much lesser depth, we realized that we need to do much more. And that is where now we actually commissioned an entire basin level study by Indian Institute of Science. And last year we signed an agreement with the Karnataka government to actually work at the basin level to sort of alleviate the water stress that is there in Bangalore. So what is this river basin level intervention? If you have to sort of create a sustainable solution, you have to actually work across the entire river flow catchment per se, which is what is the river basin. ITC over a period of time has worked in 4 basins. One of the largest basins that we have worked is a Gode River Basin in Maharashtra. We worked in MP and Bhadrachalam. And in Tamil Nadu, we worked in Bhavani. As I said, the Pennar River Basin is the most recent one. So when we did the Gode River Basin study, we actually analyzed what is the availability of water in a peak season and what was the demand for water. And when this study was done, we realized that there is a gap of 62 million cubic meters. And therefore, you have to go for interventions both from a supply side and demand side to actually neutralize this gap. And over a period of about 3 to 4 years, we have reached a situation where now it is actually water positive by 90 million cubic meter against a shortage of about 60 million cubic meters. And this has also got proved, and I think it's very important now to look at technology, where we actually work with an organization called IIT, which has done the satellite mapping and has demonstrated that there is a clear improvement in terms of the water flows right across the basin and including at the downstream level. So that's the type of lasting impact that you can create when you're actually working at a basin level intervention. So this was again a basin in Tamil Nadu where we worked with WWF for Upper Bhavani River Basin. Again, a similar study. There was a shortage and we sort of worked on the supply and demand side. We looked at the storage, different types of structures. We looked at the demand side in terms of coconut, banana, curry leaf, which were the major crops there, and achieved the water positive status. We revisited in 2025 to understand what the current requirements are, and we are still water positive. And the proof of the pudding was last year when we did the Coimbatore had a major water problem. All industries were asked to shut down. Eventually, ITC was given the permission to continue working and continue operating the plant. In this map, if you see below, the Coimbatore city was actually getting water from these points 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Last year, they reached a situation where the water levels in points 1 to 5 came down drastically. And they had to depend on the point number 6. And point number 6 is where ITC had done the river basin work. And because of that river basin work, water was still available in point 6, which actually helped in mitigating the short-term crisis that Coimbatore was facing. As I said, now the focus is on reuse and recycling, especially in terms of grey water management, whether it's in terms of liquid and fecal sludge management. So we've been working along with Department of Drinking Water, Urban Sanitation and the local panchayats and are trying different models. And probably next week we'll be actually again signing a partnership with IIT Chennai, where we have commissioned them to evaluate the different models that ITC has been doing, look at what are the other models that are there, and then over a period of time, create a playbook and toolkit, which any administration or any panchayat, if they understand that this is the archetype of their particular catchment, this is the type of water structure, waste management structures that need to be created, which are decentralized, sustainable, and can be operated at a very, very low cost. All this translates to, again, you need some sort of a validity. And when it comes to water, there is something called Alliance for Water Stewardship certification. This is a global certification, Scotland-based. And what they really look for is what is the commitment to address the challenges of water by that particular factory or catchment or company. Then it looks at what are your implementation measures and how integrated those implementation measures are. Do you have a mechanism of evaluating the impact? How transparent are you with the stakeholders, whether it's in terms of the villages, panchayats, district administration, etc.? ITC is the only company where we applied for 9 units and all 9 units have got platinum category. And the reason we have got platinum category is because of the integrated approach that we have been actually following for water. And there's just an example, if you see on the top hand side, that's the type of disclosure that you make to the community in terms of what our plans would be, what is the progress against that particular plans. And you keep discussing all these plans in periodic basis with all your stakeholders. And that's one of the key reasons that we have got the platinum. The second key reason we have got platinum is we have integrated wash interventions also into it. Increasingly, they are looking at that you also need to focus on sanitation and hygiene when you're looking at water. This is a relatively newer narrative, but something that will actually catch up over a period of time. So how do we do in MSK? This is basically what we follow is what we call as a prototype, pilot, scale, amplification, multiplication approach. So just to give an example, these are the different types of prototypes and pilots that we are working on. So on the top left-hand side, you will find that this is basically a polymer, a startup, EF Polymers. You have synthetic polymers, which actually releases moisture into the soil based on the sensing of the moisture levels. But that's not environment friendly. So you've actually now prototyped for about a year, then we actually piloted. Now this year we are in the process of scaling up. These are polymers made out of orange peels, which actually decompose into the soil and therefore it's very environment friendly. Whole lot of technologies in terms of smart irrigation switches. There's also native innovations. If you see on the bottom figure, it's actually a combination of drip and mobile. For small farmers, drip is not affordable. And what needs to be done to sort of ensure that the drip kit that is there can be used by multiple farmers, which meant you had to work on behavior change and ensuring that all farmers follow uniform spacing practice so that the same kit could be used from one field to the other. This was area where people used to get water in tankers and through large hose pipes sort of irrigate the fields. Criminal wastage of water. Now those tankers have been linked to drip irrigation. Same is the case with rain guns. Rain guns tended to be there, but we have actually again integrated in terms of linking it with tanker and mobile. And if you see in the drip irrigation, it's now also got a solarization so that you don't need to rely on diesel pumps for this. So these are the various prototypes and pilots that we keep looking at. Prototype is to test out the hypothesis. Pilot is to test out the implementation challenges. And once you have the implementation challenges addressed, then you actually scale up significantly. And this is the scale that we are talking of. 59 districts, 17 states, 5 lakh households, close to about 5,400 water user groups. Amplification is where you work with the government through a PPP route. I spoke about the use of drought proofing tool with the Karnataka Watershed Department. I spoke about the water literacy among water user associations with the Maharashtra water groups. Like this, we have had different PPPs with different governments. For the last 29 years, just for water, we have had almost about 49 PPPs, and therefore we have been able to sort of transfer and translate the experiences that we had to a much larger catchment area. One of the challenges that we have realized is that there is no single platform for data related to water. Data related to water which is reliable and which can be used by different stakeholders. So we are now actively working with one of the think tanks on creating a water data exchange. Work should probably start in the first week of September, and multiple partners are involved, both at the government level, think tank level, corporates, and technology-based companies. And the intent is, can we create a data exchange which is a digital public good? And once we are able to create the digital public good, hopefully the decision-making related to water will actually become much more effective. The impact of all this is basically it translates to climate-smart villages. And what are the impacts and outcomes? As I said, almost about 60 million cubic meters. Rain-fed area has actually got halved. Area under cultivation has increased. Groundwater table has increased. Water is available in wells for a much longer duration. Because of the silt being applied, the soil organic carbon has increased. And what we are now finding is that it's creating alternative sources of livelihood. We actually first experienced this in Pudukkottai in Tamil Nadu, then we started promoting it aggressively. And the very recent study in Telangana said that 20% of the farmers are actually now engaged in fish cultivation, which increases the earnings by about 15%. Demand side, I spoke about 1400 million cubic meters, roughly about 15 crops and 18 lakh acres. The use of drip irrigation has increased significantly, but what is more important is yield has also improved. Income has also improved. Very often in rural India, there's a perception that if I consume less water, my yields will come down, my income will come down. I think that was one of the most significant behavior change interventions that ITC had done, which has actually now enabled us to create this type of an impact. The other indirect impacts is actually reducing the GHG emissions, because if you are pumping less water, you're consuming less diesel and therefore GHG emissions. If you're following the DSR and the ZT techniques, again, the emissions comes down and therefore your value chains get decarbonized. Reverse migration has got reduced. It was sort of briefly mentioned in the other video, where earlier people were going out into the towns for livelihood. Now they don't need to do it. Women are now engaged in allied services. I spoke about water user groups now being much more active. Almost 86% of our operational water print is now under the AWS certification. CDP is one of the rating agencies, and we are at A-, which is considered as to amongst the best in water. And ITC has been water positive for the last 22 years. What we mean by water positive is we are harvesting much more water than what we are actually consuming in all our operations.
Right. There are some questions posted in the chat.
Okay. Maybe let me just open the chat.
Maybe. Can I read it for you, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is from Mr. Ram Kumar on nature-based solutions.
This is Vishwas Tendulkar about that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can start from beginning. I can see
Okay.
the chat. So the first question that I have is social invest model similar to business model of Nobel laureate Professor Mohammad Yunus? See, I think the difference here, Vishwas, would be is the whole social business model of Mohammad Yunus was to create social enterprises. Here, we are not necessarily creating social enterprises, but the investment that ITC is making is for creating more long-term impact. It's only in the livelihood vertical where we have now started working and promoting entrepreneurship. The similarity The similarity would be only to the extent of that both the models believe in involving the community in co-creation per se. That is where the similarity would be. I think the other question is that it's like a Section 8 company, but profits are put back into operations instead of distributing to various stakeholders. It's not really being put. I don't know what you mean by putting back into operations, because this is the money that is going directly into for the benefit of community, whether it's in terms of biodiversity or water or schools or health interventions, etc., but done in a manner which are actually more long-term in orientation, done in a manner where the focus is more in terms of behavior change and working on both hard components and soft components. You also had a question on how do you make social investments economically sustainable. As I said, fundamentally 3 levers. Operations and maintenance eventually has to be taken over by the community. So when you look at the water users, water structures that we create, what we actually encourage the water user groups is to create revenue models out of those structures. And those revenue models is what is actually the earnings that they have from those revenue models gets into the operations and maintenance. That's one part of it. Second part of it is we actually again get the WGs to engage with the panchayats very, very closely. Wherein from the panchayat funds, when you actually need to sort of do significant investments for, let's say, maintenance once in 5 years or once in 10 years, you're able to actually leverage the panchayat funds. The third thing that we are now looking at actively is how do you leverage government funds. There are a lot of government funds which are available where they're actually wanting it to be deployed in a manner where somebody can involve the community in ensuring that those funds get deployed in a more meaningful and effective manner. So when I spoke about the prototypes and pilots that we are doing in terms of reuse and retreatment of water, ITC's role is in terms of identifying the right technical solutions, ensuring that the DPRs are prepared in a right manner, ensuring that eventually those structures get created in a meaningful manner, and there are systems and processes for the proper use of those structures. But what we are actually leveraging is government funds there. And that's how you sort of we partnered with the PPPs or the Department of Drinking Water in using government funds also to make them economically sustainable. Yes, Mr. Ramkumar, it is actually nature-based solutions where while I spoke about water, there is a increasing interrelation with both soil and biodiversity, and more than happy to interact further. Details are also there in sustainability report.
Can I add a few lines, sir? Can I add a few lines?
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah, I think thanks, Mr. Prabhakar ji, for the wonderful efforts of ITC, because I see in your annual report or on the internet that you are a water positive model, ITC. To my mind, I think I have seen only one company. Maybe I would like to see more companies. My work, it has been a great satisfaction of the wonderful work you're doing. My work is also adding very small efforts, negligible when compared to what you're doing, is even in the city areas, which are totally concreted. We can use the Mother Earth's soil as a reservoir of water. Shallow aquifer recharge, because soil dies without water.
Absolutely.
This is the principle I'm adopting with very simple measures. And in case we can add this, because whether we can bring into the CII and the Green Co certification agencies, we can make aware of this simple method. In my case, there is no structures. Because presently what we understand by stormwater drain is taking my water to somebody else's water or area. What I am propagating or what I pleaded with many forums is make stormwater drain as rain harvesting drains, rain harvesting stormwater drain. That means it feeds the Mother Earth with water, only the balance overflows with graded gravel pits, which will filter the water also. In fact, I had a detailed presentation given to Mr. Nandakumar ji. If this concept comes, like Chennai, it gets flooded during the rains, but there is no water in summer because Chennai needs only 40% of the water. Similarly, Bangalore, I saw your statement, only 2% is harvested. Chennai may be 5 to 10%, I do not know. So in case we harvest the water, Plus, it has got a direct impact on the climate change because once the soil dies, it takes 1,000 years to get it back. So this is my request that maybe we have an interaction through the highest forums, which ICCW is holding and you're holding, to add value with my very simple methods in case it is possible. Thank you.
No, and I think the point that you mentioned, Mr. Ramkumar, is absolutely valid. And this, in fact, before the webinar started, I was discussing with Mr. Nandakumar. I think a lot of work actually needs to be done on the advocacy front.
Yeah.
And especially with the bureaucracy and the government departments to sort of demonstrate that there are solutions which are very effective.
Yeah.
You don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that is where probably there's also a role for corporates like ITC. I will not sort of put the entire responsibility. What government is coming, and that's been our learning, especially when we are working on liquid waste management, they want evidence.
Yeah.
They want evidence which is not just paper-based evidence. So they're saying, okay, if some corporates or a consortium of corporates can actually do that stormwater drain exactly like the way you said, demonstrated that this is the impact, it becomes easy for them then to sort of push things inside the administration per se.
I think I would like to answer one point here. The corporate like Indian Oil Corporation, we have done this method at many places. And there has been documented paper in the Indian Oil's magazines. Jointly by me. I was with the Indian Oil Corporation. In fact, I had adopted these techniques for Andheri Bombay colony flooding, these methods, and got a trophy also. And recently for Indian Oil bound building at Chennai, total concrete, we took 75% water into the ground. That is documented with the paper. Because I think maybe if we can move forward with ITC, doing simple things. Number one, it is easy to demonstrate. Number two, you will feel the difference just by the magic of nature.
Absolutely.
Just by the magic of nature, by doing nothing.
Great. Mr. Ramkumar, you've done fantastic. I acknowledge, and certainly we would like to pursue this. In the interest of time, maybe we'll have to move on. We will definitely come back.
There was one more question I saw on the chat box on the funding part of it. What we are doing is, right now, entire thing is funded by ITC, but we leverage government departments' budgets also where we require. We are now working on a different mechanism, and I'll just give two quick examples. One is we are working on a bilateral collaboratives. What I mean by bilateral collaboratives is, for example, one of the discussions that we are having is with EID Parry. And so EID, there are certain catchments where it sort of overlaps with the catchments of ITC and EID Parry. Now, a corporate like EID Parry, or we are talking to DCM Shriram, etc., where they want something to be done on water, but they don't have the expertise of doing it on the water. So what we are saying is that you don't fund us. We'll be the knowledge partners for you. We will probably, you fund it to our implementation partner, but we will work with our implementation partners to ensure that whatever water intervention needs to be done in your catchment is possible. The other way that is happening is the whole thing of digital public good for water that I was talking of. So here, multiple corporates are coming forward and funding, but they are funding to a third party, which is acting as an orchestrator. But there, ITC is the anchor investor. We are taking a lead role. We are making significant part of investment along with one more corporate. And then the other corporates will chip in whatever limited amounts they can do. And together the kitty becomes that much more bigger. And this orchestrator actually then deploys the fund for all the activities, all the milestones that is required for that particular intervention. So different models are evolving now. There is actually the whole river basin collaborative discussions that are happening. There's a Godavari River Basin collaborative discussion. Next week, there's again one more discussion in Bangalore. So increasingly what will happen is collaboratives will come in where different people will pool in their funds. Some agency will take the role of an orchestrator, and then actually the deployment will happen.
So I just wanted to clarify one point here, Prabhakar. When you say investment, right, you also mentioned that CSR is different and what you're doing is different. if I understood correctly, because CSR is a grant and there is no real return other than some impact that people are measuring. Whereas when you say social investment, it is then okay for the company to get certain kind of economic returns on that, is it? Are you looking also at financial returns, or it's what kind of returns as on
So we're not looking for economic returns for the company here. The economic returns is basically for the community.
Okay, so for the company itself, it's again like a grant. It's like a one-way, correct?
Yeah, the difference between CSR and investment would be is conventional CSR approach would be, okay, I will do 5 structures somewhere and finish it, or I will give it to somebody who is doing the 5 structures and I have utilized my funds. Whereas in an investment approach, that 5 has to be part of a larger roadmap, larger design, and skin in the game to ensure that it is done in a right manner, the structures are being used properly, etc. That is the difference.
But it's the same source of fund. It can go for CSR.
Same source. Absolutely. Absolutely.
The other question I have is, you have worked with large. Okay, somebody has asked a question.
Yeah, is this a philanthropic investment or CSR investment? If it's philanthropic, are you entitled for it?
Sorry?
Is this a philanthropic investment or CSR investment?
It is basically CSR, the investment of the CSR funds that need to be deployed.
That means approved by the CSR committee, right?
Yeah.
Approved by the CSR committee.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I think your audio is not very good, Vishwas.
Yeah.
You're losing. Maybe you can type your question, because the audio seems to be.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a question from Krish on measuring economic return for the community. Yes, as I sort of briefly had mentioned, we look at in terms of what is the impact for the farmers in terms of yield and incomes. How has it actually added to diversification of income if say they've got into fisheries, etc. So that's a very important element of the impact measurement.
Okay.
You were asking one question.
I was wanting to know, you have worked with state governments and leading institutions. You're partnering with them in this initiative, right? The audience in this, maybe a lot of them may be startups, maybe NGOs, maybe smaller organizations, which are also part of the water ecosystem, right? I know that you've also worked with startups and with NGOs in some way. So how can these smaller organizations work with large corporates like ITC, which is doing phenomenal amount of work in water? Is there a role for them to play, or is it only large companies or institutions which can? How do we participate?
To me, there is a huge role by every ecosystem player. And increasingly, I see there's going to be a significant role for the startups also. The only piece of advice that I would have for any startups who are in the space of the water is, you may have a fantastic idea in terms of technology, etc. But to look at it not from your lens of having developed an idea or developed a technology, but look at it from the lens of the lowest person in the society and the community. And I'll give a very simple example. Recently, again, I wouldn't want to name that startup. So they had come up with a solution in terms of that I have a EV sort of a thing. I don't need to rely on diesel, etc. for charging. And then they had a simple calculation, etc. and wanting it to be sort of deployed. Similar thing was with smart sensors. Now, what happens is, and this we found with our own insights, Nandu, is the smart sensors uptake happened in areas where the farmer was residing far away from the farmlands. It was not working where farmer was literally staying in the field. The value that the farmer saw, it was the value that the farmer saw in case of Rajasthan, where the fields were away, was not so much in terms of water consumption, but the drudgery and the commute time.
Right.
So the value manifestation was very, very different. So
Right.
as long as startups are open to that idea of recalibrating their hypothesis, recalibrating their proposition, keeping in mind the lens of the farmer community is one. Second, I think also is typically when it comes to corporates, to be genuine and honest to sort of evaluate and assess, are there not other solutions and startups which are already there in the market? And instead of just saying, no, my solution is the best, but for what might have happened is a similar solution I've already evaluated with 8 other or 10 different players. So I think that ability to reflect openly is one important thing. That's as far as the startups is concerned. Implementation partners, yes, means, okay, maybe in ITC, many of the partners we've been working for 15 years, 20 years, and therefore it's a long standing. But when you go to a newer area, you require newer implementation partners. But for corporates like ITC, what one is now looking increasingly on implementation partners, whether it is water or anything, is the whole focus on governance, systems, and processes. The whole emphasis on traceability, the whole emphasis on monitoring impact and outcomes. It's not just about constructing a structure, but the process through which you do, I think that's becoming an important element as far as implementation partners are concerned. I think there is a huge scope for knowledge partners. And whether it is IIT or anybody else, to actually do an independent study, evaluation, assessment of the impacts and outcomes that, whether it's ITC or anybody else, or of the different solutions. And that is what we are now actually planning to sign with Philip in IIT Chennai, to look at some of these liquid waste management solutions. And based on that, create a playbook and toolkit with which we'll go to the government per se. So there is a role for every type of player in the ecosystem, in my view.
Great. Okay.
Including funders.
Including funders. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure they're listening somewhere. And yeah, there are a lot of other questions on my mind, but are there anything which are unanswered here?
No, chat box we have done. Means,
okay.
I am okay to
There
spend
is-
another 5-10 minutes. No issues.
Actually, can I have few questions, sir?
Sure.
Yeah, so I could see a major similar interest that that where I'm working now, the space where we are working, and it's overwhelming to see a lot of impact that ITC has measured and huge amount of work being done in the space of water bodies. So we are now developing a standardized tool to measure the impact assessment, especially for the water interventions, both in terms of pre and post, to technically and scientifically evaluate the impact, and also to look into the benefits, either direct or indirect, to the farmers or to the crops, to the women, as you are rightly mentioned. So we are now in that space, and also trying to see the holistic water rejuvenation project as such, so that we'll see end-to-end solutions, and is there anything other things that we could integrate and develop as a model solution for the places where the water is required, both in terms of scarcity and as well as the quality aspects. So I could see, and I wish, and we could have some positive collaborations in future. And also, we are also now looking into the river basin management, and I could see a lot of watershed management studies have been addressed. So we are also planning to do in similar lines. And one thing I wanted to propose is, you were mentioning about water data, digital management for the decision making system. So we are also in line with that, and we are trying to develop some model and tools where we are trying to loop all the secondary possible data, secondary information, also along with the primary data from our projects and what we do for CSR and all other aspects, so that it can be in one digital asset. And we are also trying to develop a course on digital asset management for the water, so for industries and various stakeholders, so that it could be a certified program to them, how they can manage their water systems digitally, and that could help the policymaker or the government authorities to make a better decisions to implement them on ground. So I could see a lot of scope and possibilities for the collaboration. So I look forward.
And in fact, what I will do is I will connect you separately to the agency with whom we are working on this digital public good. Probably
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of value in engaging.
Yes.
Like one of the things, technology, that yesterday only I was discussing with my team, and probably my colleague Girish would have already reached out to Vasudha today. The challenge that we have is when I'm doing Nandu, let's say I'm doing 3,000 farm ponds across. Can I measure the volume of water harvesting potential that I've created through digital technology?
Yes.
It's very easy today through satellite coordinates to
Yeah.
sort of measure the area, but is there a reliable solution to measure volumetric
Volume.
capacity?
It is possible. I think this is something.
Yeah.
This is what we discussed yesterday.
Yesterday, yes, sir. Yeah.
We also discussed yesterday, and I've actually asked Girish to reach out to Nandu.
I must connect with Vasudha more often. I think something is happening in parallel there, which I'm probably not in tune.
This is a genuine problem statement for us, Nandu. And the reason why it's become a problem statement for is very interesting that it's driven more from a governance angle.
Right. No, absolutely.
Because the board asks that, how do I rely? You might have measured something.
In water, we also found another challenge that if you're focusing on a catchment and if you're increasing water for that catchment, it may deprive the adjacent catchment of something, and vice versa.
No. Correct.
Consumption also happens in parallel. So it doesn't mean end of the day you will show some increase in water level. It may not be there, but somebody will use it. So there are all kinds of outcomes possible.
I think Vishwas' question was, is this separate philanthropic investment or CSR investment? It is fundamentally the CSR investment. I think the philanthropic investment is more in kind in terms of our domain expertise and the technical expertise that we bring into the table, which also actually has a huge value. When you're working in agriculture, your ability to actually work on package of practices to reduce consumption of water is actually an investment. There's also a question from ICCW.
Yeah, KS
Gopal has, I think, his posters.
There's one question on the capacity building program for schools under CSR. That's a huge intervention for us, where we work with schools in terms of capacity building for teachers and children. And those of you who might be interested can actually see a sustainability report that has got all the details for us.
Thank you. I had posted that question. Thank you so much.
Mr. KS Gopal.
Yeah, just
Yes,
read on a long question
yeah,
there.
yeah. So the question is good to note groundwater table is improved to meet needs on 8.5 months. Presume the balance period are summer months when demand for water by households, horticulture farms, heat waves, etc. What do you see for year-long groundwater meeting the supply and demand?
One has to be also practical and realistic. And while yes, that is the ideal, you want to sort of keep improving the needle per se, but it will have to be more similar, more depth of engagement over a sustained period of time that the water tables will actually keep increasing. But to me, I think the biggest thing is collectively as a society, all of us have to work towards reducing consumption of water. It's only when we start reducing the consumption of water, 8.5 may move to 9. I think we may be putting disproportionate efforts to see technology solutions or harvesting solutions to move the needle from 8.5 to 9. But if we can actually work on behavior change and making every citizen responsible for it, that's a much faster way to do it.
Right.
And people realize it only when there is a crisis. Last year in Bangalore, when Bangalore 2 years back, when they went through a crisis, that is the time when all the complexes brought in a rule saying that you can clean your cars only alternate days. Now, why should it be only when there is a crisis? Why can't all associations say that, no, you can clean your water only once in 2 days or once in 3 days?
Right. No, both have to happen, supply and demand management. Right. Chaitanya, if there are no questions, I think that video was to be played.
Maybe if you could share your presentation, it will be useful.
Sure.
Some of there I have seen in the chat box for your email address and the contact
I've put
details.
that,
I'll share to them. I'll share to them.
Sure.
So are you playing
In case of
No, I didn't send the video. I'll probably send it separately and then that
Yes,
can
sir.
be circulated
Yeah,
to
yeah,
us.
yeah.
Okay, fine. So, are we ending this call? Are there any more queries?
There is no any further questions. Thank you so much, sir. It's a highly insightful session, and I'm very glad to see so much of things happening on ground in real implementation. Is something that it's overwhelming always. Thank you so much, and I see a lot of positive scope for the collaboration, and I really look forward for many such real-time interventions and the work together. Nanda sir, would you like to?
Oh, it's amazing, in a collaborative way, how much can be done, and the numbers are pretty staggering, but it gives us hope that such things can be done if big corporates come and, support it. We will continue our
I
efforts.
think, Nandu, what is encouraging, I see now more and more corporates getting into this engagement on
Yeah.
collaboratives, discussions, etc. At least that intent is coming out very, very strongly, which was not there even 4 years back, actually.
Right.
That's a positive sign.
Correct. So maybe little more y'all can consider looking at emerging technologies, and because they will need some time, and we have also have an ecosystem on how to help them to focus on problems rather than their product. But they also need some immersive experience in the field, and I think ITC has a lot of test beds, if I can call it that, where they can learn, fall down, learn, and improve.
In fact, that's the other thing that I have as an offer to some of the startups, especially if they are working in an ecosystem. Many of them require a sandbox to test out their products and this thing.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
It's not, and I think that is the other thing that I find many startups come saying, no, please buy our products. But eventually the buying of products will have to happen only if the farmer sees a value.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have to work on a sandbox to see whether the farmer sees a value or not.
Correct.
And that is something that we can actually offer.
That can be facilitated. Maybe there may be a little bit of investment may be needed for the cost, but at the end of the day, it will have a multiplier effect, as you're saying. Maybe we can look at that separately and track some initiatives there.
So there's just one question that I saw. There's one from Mr. Nagarjuna, roadblocks. See, roadblocks, definitely one of the biggest roadblocks is people still do not see value of water. I think that's the first roadblock. Second, this is, as long as I am not getting impacted, why should I think of a larger problem of water? Third, a perception that why should I be involved in solving a water problem that is the government's problem? Fourth, as I mentioned earlier, was a fear that if I sort of start using less water, etc., will I have negative consequences? So all these are at an individual level, the roadblocks. The other level of roadblocks is actually mobilizing the community and to work together. It's a huge roadblock. There, I guess ITC has the strength because we work in our catchments, we have a trust, equity, credibility. We just don't walk into an area and saying that all of you need to work together, but ability to get the community to work together as a community. Then you go to a third level of roadblock. How do you get the community, panchayat, government, etc. to work together? So they are in 3 different levels. So at individual level, second is community level, then the third is the ecosystem level. All 3 becomes a challenge per se. And the other challenge as far as community engagement really would be is community also needs to have patience. The results on water are not evident in day 1 or season 1 actually. If you construct a school, the results are evident, but water evident may take, by the time the water level improves, it could be 3 years actually. So they need to also have a patience per se.
True, very much. Okay. I think we can end it here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, all the participants.
Thank Chaitanya. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to all the participants, actually, and all of the people who have actually asked questions. And I will also share the link of the sustainability report with you, Chaitanya, which can be circulated to all the people who are there.
Definitely, sir.
lot more details and information that is available in the sustainability report.
Sure.
Sure. Right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Bye.
Bye.